Sometimes the best public policy has a really simple principle to it. Public health care, it's about everybody getting the health care they need regardless of their ability to pay. With housing, it comes down to something as simple as this. Everybody needs a home. That's the principle that is behind the Alberta Liberal policy on affordable housing. Right now I'm sitting at the dining room in the house Jeanette and I have lived in for 25 years where we raised our kids. In fact, it's in the neighborhood where I grew up. We're really fortunate to be able to afford a home. But there are thousands of people in Alberta who can't only not afford to buy a home, they can't even afford to rent a place. We've traveled around Alberta a lot talking to people about housing issues. They first were brought to me directly more than a year ago in Calgary when I began having people approach me about huge rent increases. Since then, the housing issue has become almost a crisis around this province. Recently, I was in Grande Prairie, held public meetings there. We thought all kinds of issues would come up, but the only thing people wanted to talk about was affordable housing. We almost had people in tears in the audience as they spoke about workers and families living for weeks on end in the cabs of pickup trucks because there was nowhere else to live. That's unacceptable in this province. That's unacceptable to the Alberta Liberals. When something reaches a crisis like this in Grande Prairie, in Calgary, in Edmonton, in Hinton, in Fort McMurray, in Red Deer, we need a government that takes action and takes action now. The action we would take immediately to protect people. We would bring in a law that limits rent increases to one time per year, so that once people are into a rental unit, they know that at least for a year they're secure. We would also bring in a 10% cap for 1 year on rent increases so that we give a break to renters, a pause in the action, and they're not facing 40 and 50 and 100% rent increases, which can be so unfair. We'd also work with municipalities to help them bring on more secondary suites where it was appropriate, things like basement suites and granny suites. There's all kinds of spaces already available in people's homes, and people are prepared to rent them out. We just need to work with the municipalities to make that happen. In the longer term, of course, the real solution is to increase supply. The Alberta Liberals would do three things in that area as well. We'd provide financial assistance to moderate and low-income homeowners or people who want to become homeowners so that they could afford to buy their first home. We'd also work with municipalities to freeze or even eliminate property taxes on new rental properties to increase the number of apartments that are being built. And finally, in areas where new land is controlled by the provincial government, we would work quickly to release land, whether that's the Crown land around Fort McMurray or Hinton, or perhaps provincial land that can be handled through land swaps so that land can be brought on stream for development right away. Too often this province has sat on land for far too long. With those kinds of steps, we think we can secure both the short term and bring in long-term solutions that work for landlords and tenants and help make home ownership and affordable housing a possibility for everybody in this province, because as our basic principle of this policy says, everybody needs a home.